Hello, I'm David Sparks, and welcome to the Obsidian Field Guide. Obsidian is a revolutionary application. It starts out making you think it's just a notes app, but as you get into it, you realize it can change the way you think. The difficulty is it has a pretty steep learning curve. So I've spent the last 8 months working on ways to teach you the best ways to use Obsidian, and that's what this course is. There's 78 videos, 6 hours of video content. If you get the Plus edition, you're going to pretty much double that, but either way, my goal for you is by the time you get to the end of this course to be off and running with Obsidian and making it work for you. So let's get started. As we head into this journey together, you may be asking yourself, why Obsidian? Obsidian is a new breed of text applications. It goes beyond what we've seen before with prior notes apps. What I mean is, typically we would have a list of files and we would have them in a folder, and we've always had a hierarchical structure to the way we structure our notes. That makes sense because that's how we did it in the old-timey days when we used analog notebooks. You always had a hierarchical organization. It's the only way that made sense. But Obsidian is a computer application, and it thinks about files and their relationships in ways that only computer applications can. What I mean by that is there's no need for a hierarchy. Instead, it can look at the interrelationship between all of your files. This allows you to open up pathways and new ways to think about the information that relates between your notes. You're no longer bound to a folder. Folders still exist, and there's good arguments to use them with parts of Obsidian, but that's not the fundamental organizational structure. It's the links. Links allowed you to link your ideas and to develop new trains of thought. It actually turns your notes application into a thinking machine for you. Now, there's a lot more to like about Obsidian. First of all is its architecture. It stores your data on your local drive, so you have control of it at all times. There are ways to sync your data, and I'm going to cover that in this course. But fundamentally, Obsidian starts out as a folder full of markdown files on your computer. In fact, you're going to hear me say that so many times in this course that it's going to start feeling like a drinking game. But Obsidian adds onto that architecture with customizability, and this goes throughout the application, whether it's the way you want things to look on your screen or the way you want the application to work with itself or with other applications. Everything in Obsidian is customizable. It's also dynamic. Obsidian has a small development team in the very best of ways. They are dedicated to making the application evolve and change over time. They're responsive to what the users want, and they continue to make huge improvements with each update. Indeed, throughout the production of this course, we had to make several changes because Obsidian just kept getting better as we were recording it. And one of my favorite things about Obsidian is this plugin architecture. So not only does the application get better because of the work of developers, but the community can also make third-party plugins. We've got a whole section in this course going over some of my favorites, but you can add features to Obsidian yourself if you want to write your plugin. If you don't want to write them yourself, there are thousands to choose from. And like I said at the beginning, at the end of the day, this is a folder full of markdown files. You own all that data. It's absolutely readable to you. You're never going to lose it if they shut the application down. There's a lot to love about Obsidian, and as you get through this course, I think you're going to agree with me. So let's go. One of the best ways to define what Obsidian is to compare it to what it's not. So let's just take a minute and look at some of the big applications in the same or similar space and distinguish them from Obsidian. The first one is Roam Research. Roam was one of the very first applications to the game with this idea of linked thinking. Now, I understand wiki links go back a long time, and I talked about that earlier in the course, but Roam Research really tied it together. Roam is a web-based tool where Obsidian is a local application, and that means there is a very different philosophy behind the apps, even though on the surface they look very similar. They both use heavily links and backlinks to tie your thinking together. One of the big advantages of Roam, because it's a web app, is you can log in from anywhere in the world and get full access to your knowledge base. Obsidian is more localized. It's on an app, but that allows you to get more customization in the way the app works for you. It also allows this great plugin architecture. There are a lot of people that prefer Roam over Obsidian. For me, there's no question that Obsidian is a better application. I like the data portability. I like that I control my database. And that's one of the big distinguishing facts, honestly, is that with Roam, your data is in their cloud. And with Obsidian, it's stored locally on your computer with a folder full of markdown files. And that was one of the big reasons why I leaned into Obsidian as it developed over Roam. Craft is another linked thinking application. It is more graphically friendly. It does a better job of including multimedia. It also does a very good job with sharing, where Obsidian really doesn't have a sharing story, but it's not as nimble and it's not as open as Obsidian. If you want to work with a team, you may want to look at Craft over Obsidian, but if you're working on your own and you want a very fast, customizable system for linking thoughts and ideas together, Obsidian is probably better. I can tell you that in my life, I use Obsidian for my personal stuff and I use Craft for my team-based stuff. Notion is another team-based tool, and this one is more universal. It's not just on the Mac platforms. It is much better at collaboration than anything I've talked about today, and it is very customizable. It is not, however, that folder full of markdown files that Obsidian is, and it's not as nimble with respect to words as Obsidian is. Notion leans heavily into collaboration and shared data, and Obsidian leans heavily into giving you every possible tool you could need to work with text. This is another one where many people successfully run both Notion and Obsidian at the same time. I'm frequently asked about the differences between DevonThink and Obsidian as well. DevonThink is the subject of another field guide, and I'm a big fan of that application and use it daily. DevonThink is a native experience on the Mac, iPhone, and iPad, and is much better at multimedia than Obsidian is. If you're tracking a lot of files, pictures, images, PDFs, whatever, DevonThink is going to do a better job. While Obsidian has support for attachments, DevonThink masters them. I also often get asked if Apple Notes can replace Obsidian, and the answer is it cannot. Even with recent updates to Apple Notes where it's going to allow you to link notes, it doesn't have backlinks, it doesn't have plugins. For the types of things we're going to do in this course, you'll see that Apple Notes simply isn't up to the task. So what is it that makes Obsidian different? It is that laser focus on taking that folder full of markdown files and giving you a seemingly infinite amount of tools to work on them with. It excels with words, and it also excels with ideas because it gives you this really powerful way to link between these and see connections between your ideas and your words that you wouldn't see otherwise. Put simply, it gives you insight, power, and flexibility over your words. Before we get started on this Obsidian journey, I want to talk about the journey itself, because of all the applications I've used over the years, I feel like none of them have had a more distinct journey than Obsidian, and I see this not just in myself, but most people that I know that get on this Obsidian train. So let's just talk through what you're going to go through. First is you're interested in this application. It's such an interesting application. It's not like anything we've ever seen before. It's largely built on this plugin architecture, so it's very open to changes and further development. It doesn't really fit in on the Mac, iPad, iPhone, Windows, Android, or anything because it's this Electron app, and you're just interested as you get in it. And it can be a little overwhelming, but there's a learning curve, and as you start to get over that learning curve and you start figuring it out, then Obsidian gets to kind of the next phase, and I call that the amazing phase, because people start to learn the power of Obsidian and how they can do almost anything they want with words in this application, and they want it to do everything. They move their calendar, their journal, their diary, their task system. Anything they do with words, they want to now do in Obsidian, and because there's so many plugins, they can probably do a decent job of it. But there is a phase where people get so into Obsidian that that's all they use. I went through that. I've witnessed a lot of other people go through that. And for some people, that's where the journey ends. They just use Obsidian for everything. And once you get through this course, you'll see how you can do that. But for most people, I feel like there's a third stop on that journey. And that is what I call the useful stop. And that's where you get past that idea of doing everything in Obsidian, but you start to get a good idea for the stuff that really works for you in Obsidian. At that point, you find your balance with the application. There are so many plugins, there's so many things you can add to the app, but that doesn't necessarily make them always the best in breed. There may be a third-party app that does one thing better, and you decide, well, I'm going to keep that out in a third-party app, and I'm going to do this other thing in Obsidian, and you find your own balance. And that is really the goal of this course, to get you to that point. So just to summarize, first, it's interesting, you're a little nervous, you're not sure if it's worth it, then you think it's amazing, and then you get to the point of usefulness. And it is that word useful that I want to get to with this course. As we get through the course, you start to understand what you can do with Obsidian. By the end, I'd like you to find your own personal useful balance with Obsidian where you can make it work for you. And that is definitely possible. So let's get started. One of the reasons I made this course is because Obsidian isn't like most applications. Whether you're an expert on Windows or the Mac, Obsidian is an Electron app, which means it's just built differently and it doesn't always do the behaviors you're used to. In this section, we're going to talk about the basics of Obsidian, getting it up and running and getting your vault built and all the underlying mechanics of making it work. Once we have that basis, we can build on it in later sections because Obsidian gets really powerful really fast. But first, we need to set that solid foundation, and we're going to do it in this section. Getting started with Obsidian requires you to download the software. Obsidian is an application available on the internet. To get started, you want to start on your Mac, and you want to go to obsidian.md. That's the website for the application. Just to poke around the website a little bit, you can download Obsidian right from the website. It's a free download, but there are licenses, and I'll explain that in just a minute. They go ahead and explain how the application works. We're going to be going through a lot of this in the field guide, but you can see Obsidian generally has a left column with a list of files. Then on the middle, you've got the content of the files. They also have this cool graph view we're going to talk about, and there is a version of the application on the iPhone. And then they've got some people talking about how great the app is and some of its features. But I really want to point out these community links at the bottom. They have a Discord, forum, and Reddit for Obsidian, and there are a ton of people there that are super enthusiastic about the app and using it. These are great places to go to learn, share ideas, and find out more about good ways to use Obsidian. So you'll want to check that out. So I mentioned there's pricing. Let's take a look at that. This is the website for the pricing. If you're going to use this for your personal use, it's 100% free. There's no fee for using Obsidian. There's no accounts or signups. They don't know who you are. You download it, you run it locally, you're good to go. If you want to be a Catalyst supporter, this is the level I'm in at. You can help support the development. And if you start using Obsidian, I'd encourage you to go ahead and do this. It's worth it. It's $25 or more. You can pay more if you want. And it helps support the developers. It also gets you the early insider builds. And I'm always looking at, what's the new features coming down the road. And this gets you with hands on them earlier, gives you badges in the community and access to the developer channel in their community center. Now, there's really nothing you can do with Catalyst that you can't do with a personal license, but because Obsidian is such a great application, and if you really start using it, I'd recommend signing up for a Catalyst license. And then if you're going to use it commercially, they have a commercial license as well, with bulk licenses available. Now, in addition to these licensing levels, Obsidian also has some add-on services. The first one is Obsidian Sync, and this is a sync engine that they run for you. It's fully end-to-end encrypted. I love that. So you put your password in, they don't have it. Everything is encrypted before it leaves your device. So if they've got a subpoena or if they get hacked or anything, nobody can read your data without your key to unencrypt it. So I really like that feature about it. But I can tell you right now, this will be the one I recommend because I think it's just so rock solid. And then they have the ability to publish a database, and that is $16 per month. I'm actually publishing a database that you're getting as part of your purchase of this course, so you can get a good idea how that works. But if you make something in Obsidian that you want to share with the world, you can use this publish feature to handle that for you. Now, both the sync and publish are features that you could do without paying them. The way the application is made, you could kind of roll your own publishing platform, or you could sync it in other ways that don't cost you extra money. If you do decide to use these features, this is where you get them. I mentioned earlier that there is a mobile version of the application which you can get for free as well. I'm going to be covering that with a series of videos as part of this course. Plugin architectures, there's just a ton of great plugins in Obsidian. This is really the selling point, frankly, is you can add features, you can write the plugins yourself, but there's a lot of people in the community already making good ones. They've got a tab up here for ways you can sync. Again, we've got a whole video on that, and publish I've already talked about. And then once again, here's that community tab with links to the Discord and the Obsidian forum. There's just a lot of great information there. So either way, once you're ready to download Obsidian, you just press this button right here and it downloads the application. So here you can see I've got the Obsidian Universal on my desktop. It's a DMG file. You will find it in your downloads. I've just put it on the desktop to make it easy here. Once you double click that, you just drag it into applications. If you go down to the applications under O, you will see Obsidian is sitting there waiting for you. I happen to have it running. So there it is, Obsidian. So this one has a little data in it, but the version we're going to be working from starting with the next video is going to be empty. But I thought I'd just share this with you. This is the shared Obsidian vault that you get as part of the purchase of this course. And in fact, if you go under Obsidian Setup here, you can see there is section 4.2, which we're recording. If I click that, you can see there's the page I have created with my notes for things I wanted to talk about here in this video. It looks like I got them all. So it's time to move on to the next video. All right, let's take a look at the Obsidian user interface. I'm going to start on the far left with the ribbon, and the ribbon is this narrow list of icons down the left side of the screen. It's got a set of the most commonly used tools. The first is the ability to search Obsidian, and if you click on this, it opens up the feature where you can type in the name of anything and it finds a related document. You can also access that with the keyboard shortcut Command O. Next to that is the graph view. Now in Obsidian, they've got this really cool graph view that lets you visualize your data. We haven't got to that yet in the field guide, but as we get deeper, you'll see that this is actually kind of an interesting feature. I'll go ahead and turn it on here, and you can see the graph related to the Disneyland page. Next to that is the ability to create new canvases. And canvases in Obsidian is a setup of the user interface that's customized for specific types of work. You can create different canvases for different kinds of work, and we're going to get into that later in another video. Next to that is the daily note. One of the features a lot of people use in Obsidian is running a daily note where they can put links to the various pages and things they worked on. Following that is the ability to insert a template. Again, this is stuff we're going to get later in the course, but there's a button for it. And finally, you can open the command palette, which is a very powerful tool in Obsidian. In fact, let me just tease that a little bit. If you hit Command P or push that button, you can access any control in Obsidian. Like I'll type dark, and you can see that I can have it go to dark mode just by going to the command palette. I'll type light, and then it can go right back. Now, this top set of tools may change depending on your usage of Obsidian as you add additional third-party plugins. Some of those things will show up in the ribbon. But I'm showing you here the basic set of tools that you get in the ribbon. Now, going down to the bottom of the ribbon, there's some more. You can open and manage vaults. With that button, you can get help, and you can access the settings. Now, up at the top, you get the title bar. And the title bar has a set of tools above each sidebar, but it also has a list of tabs that you currently have open. On the left sidebar, you've got a couple buttons. The first one allows you to star a page. That's another way to find it. It's a sort of metadata. The next one allows you to search, and the last one allows you to manage files. So currently, I'm showing the files view. If I click on this, you can see I get the search view, and then now I can see a list of all the starred documents. If I go back over here and right-click on the Disneyland one and then say star, and then I go up to the starred files, you'll see that it shows up. And while we're here, let's take a look at the left sidebar. And the left sidebar shows one of those displays, your search, your starred, or your files view. You can manage things in this view. For instance, if I right-click on any one of these, you see I've got a bunch of options available. I can open it in new tabs. I can open it to the right in a new window. I can rename it right here in the sidebar, or I can make a copy of it. So if I want to duplicate this, just make a copy and I can start working from that. I can move it to different locations, star it, or merge it. I can open it in a default app. So if I want to open it somewhere else, I can do that. I can reveal it in the Finder, copy the Obsidian URL, and view the sync history and delete. So you've got a bunch of tools you can do with each one of these files right here in the sidebar. Also in the files view, you can create a new note, a new folder, change the way they're displayed or sort order, and you can collapse them all if you want. If I hit that, then you'll see it'll collapse the Disneyland disclosure triangle. Search is really powerful in Obsidian, and you've got a different set of tools for that to match case, explain the search items, collapse the results, show more content, change the sort order, or copy the search results. And then for starred items, you just have the ability to assign a star or unstar an item. Like if I go to Disneyland here, I can unstar that and it'll disappear. And then I can star, unstar a current search. So not only can you star files, you can star searches. And if you want to hide or show that, you just click this button right here and it shows or hides the left sidebar. Sometimes when you really want to work, you just hide the sidebars and then you've got the application just here as a pure text editor. Now, while we're still in the title bar, I'm going to go over to the right sidebar and you see that you've got a different set of features available to you there. One is to get the backlinks into a file. The other one is to get the outgoing links in a file. Like if I click this, you see I've got links outgoing to several different files. This allows me to assign and see tags. And this last one allows me to see an outline. So if I've got heading levels, you can see the outline right here on the right side. This is actually one of my favorite buttons here because I can navigate through a file very quickly. This one fits on the screen, but some of my Obsidian documents get really long, and having this outline view allows me to navigate it. And again, you can hide or show that with this button right here. Now, while you're in a specific file, that's on the workspace, which is the main area of Obsidian where you can get your work done. And you can switch between edit and reading view here. And then under these vertical dots are many more options. So you can close it, you can pin it, you can link it with a tab. You can see the backlinks in the document. And if I do that, it shows the backlinks at the bottom as opposed to on the right sidebar. A lot of people keep this just turned on because they like to see all the backlinks all the time, whether or not they have the sidebar available. Let's continue down. You can switch to reading mode there. You can also just put it in source mode so you see all the coding in it, which is a view that I kind of prefer, to be honest. You can split it right or split it down. So if you've got a file here, you want to split it into two, you can do that right there. You can move it to a new window, rename it. You can move it to a different folder or location in your file system. You can star it or merge it. You can do a find inside the specific file or a replace. You can export it to PDF if you want to share it with somebody. You can open it in a different app, reveal in Finder, reveal in file navigation, or you can open a linked view. We're going to talk about that later because that's a whole different feature. And then we can also copy the Obsidian URL, view sync history, and delete file. There is some overlap between this submenu and the Files view on the other side when you right-click. Some of the options show up in both places, but the more complete set lives under the vertical dots. This set will expand. Actually, it will here, and it also will expand over here when you right-click as you add additional plugins, because once again, the plugin architecture of Obsidian allows third-party developers, as they add different features with plugins, to access those menus. But there you have it, an overview of the Obsidian user interface. In this section, we're going to tackle the core plugins in Obsidian, and these are the pieces of Obsidian that really make the application tick. The developers put these plugins together during the development of Obsidian during the beta process, and they scratched most of the itches. That means once you learn these core plugins, you're really able to use Obsidian for most of its power. Now, we're going to get even deeper later in this course with some community plugins and other features, but once you master these core plugins, you're cooking with gas. If Obsidian could put a big giant button on your keyboard called Get Out of Jail Free, it would be the command palette. You access that by hitting Command plus P, and that allows you to see all the available commands in Obsidian. And the interesting thing about this list is that it's dynamic. It's going to have the default set of commands when you first install it, but as you start to put more plugins in, it's going to add them to this list. For instance, earlier I turned on the audio recorder. If I tap audio, you'll see there's the audio recorder start and stop command showing up in this list. And virtually anything you want to do in Obsidian, if you can't remember how to do it, just hit Command P and it gives you a get out of jail free card. You'll see that at the top here, it says copy Obsidian URL, and it's got this little pin next to it. Well, that's because I have pinned this one because it's one of my favorites and I always want to have it really close by. But I also have made a keyboard shortcut, Control K, for that. But let me show you how I did that. I'm going to open the settings. But instead of using Command comma or going down here and pressing the little gear icon, I'm going to use the command palette. So I'm going to hit Command P, just type settings, and you can see that's the very first option there, open settings. And again, it does show me the available shortcut for it. Now I could either click on this or just hit return with the mouse, and that's the easiest way to use it. You just put the arrow key down to the one you want and hit it. And you can see now I'm in the command palette. I'm actually in the command palette settings, and I have this copy Obsidian URL here saved as a pinned command. Let's pick another one. Let's do a PDF one. Let's say I want to make export to PDF a pin command. All I have to do now is go down here and click on this, and it's been added. If I want, I can reorder these. I can also delete them just by hitting the X. And I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to hit Command P, and you can see export to PDF and Obsidian are available to me. And then everything else below that is alphabetical. One of my favorite uses for this is as I add new features to the application with additional plugins, and I'm going to be taking you deep down the rabbit hole of third-party plugins, it's going to add all those commands to this command palette. And if I'm learning a new plugin or I just can't remember how to do something with it, I just hit Command P, that big get out of jail free card button, and then I just type a few words in related to the plugin, and that usually gets me where I need to be. It's really handy to have this one up your sleeve, and Command P may be one of the most frequent keyboard shortcuts you ever use in Obsidian. Obsidian also has the ability to generate an outline based on the markdown headings on the current page. To create that, you just go up to the right sidebar and you see there's a little outline button. It's three lines here, three horizontal lines with little dots next to them, just like an outline. If you click on that, it gives you the outline view, and you can see this is auto-generated just based on the headings over here. If I go into edit mode and you see this is a level 2 heading, favorite things is also a level 2 heading, so they're standing out with the little disclosure triangles next to them. I can fold them up if I want. Favorite Disneyland restaurants should also be on this list, but it's not a heading. So I'm going to match it. The one above it is level 3, so I'll make this also level 3 with 3 hashtags. Hit the space bar, and now you can see it's already been added over here. And that also gives you the ability to navigate them on large documents. Sometimes if I'm editing a document that goes on pages and pages, I can just go to the outline view and click where I need to go. This is a core plugin. It's turned on by default. You can find it in the Obsidian settings. I'm going to go to Command comma here to get to the core plugins. And then going down, you can see there's the outline and it's turned on. And just remember, this is tied to those markdown headings. So if you see something amiss in here, you can always fix it by just going in and adjusting the headings. I'll add one more here just for fun, and I will call it Shopping Experiences. And because I made it a level 2 heading, you can see it's adding itself here at the level 2. I guess it would help if I typed experiences correctly. There we go. But you'll find that these headings can be quite useful on long documents and also just to give a logical order to whatever you're working on. One of Obsidian's most powerful features is the ability to run templates on existing files. You can create these templates and just drop them in anytime you need them. I use them all the time. Let me give you some examples. Now to begin with, you'll see I already have a templates folder. I created this in an earlier video so you could see it, and we talked about that with respect to the daily note, but we're going to create some new templates in this video. You want to make sure the templates plugin or core plugin is turned on. Just scroll down to where it says templates, And you can see there it is. If you get the gear icon, you can make a couple adjustments. You want to make sure you set it to a folder where the templates are located. I have one called templates. I think that's a pretty good name for a folder full of templates. And then you can adjust the format of the day and the hour. The interesting thing about templates is it lets you insert wildcards in the template that you can insert later. I'm going to create a new document here, and we're going to call it book notes. And sometimes when I read a book, I take notes on it. So I'm going to create a template for it. So we're going to first have the name of the book, and we'll call it the book title. And just hold on with me a second. I'll show you what I'm going to do there. Book notes. And I'll go ahead and make that a heading 2. And instead of saying book title, because I don't know what the title is, I'm going to just put the word title between 2 curly brackets. And you see, when I did that, I created basically a variable. It's going to insert the title of the note I'm working on and put that in there with the word book notes behind it. And then I'm going to make a new heading called book details. And we're going to say author, publication date, referred by. A lot of times friends refer books to me. I keep track of who refers to good books. Rating. I just keep a simple 1 to 5 level on books I read. Then we can have key takeaways. And then I have one called key points. So what are the big points of the author and what do I take away out of it? And then I'm going to have one called action items. And we're going to put a to-do item in here. I do that with that text expander snippet I shared in the formatting video earlier. Action item 1. So there is a basic template that I would use whenever I read a book and I want to create a note on it in Obsidian. To trigger this, I need to make a new note. So let's go ahead and make a new folder. Call it Books Read. And then I'm going to, in that folder, I'm going to create a new note inside of it. And I'm going to make this one about the book Calm by Chris Bailey. I think it's a great book, and I really like it. So now I'm going to hit the Command P, which opens the command palette, and I'm going to type TE for template. You can see the very first entry there is Insert Template. So I'm going to hit Insert Template, and you see I have one there listed Book Notes. And the reason that's showing up is because I have it in the Templates folder. That's the reason you set that default folder. Any documents I add to this will show up as templates. So I'll go ahead and click that, and you can see it inserted it for me. And it put the title of the note in. It took the title Calm, and it put in Book Notes. Now I'm going to delete this because I just realized there's something else I want to show you with that template. So let's go back and edit the template file again. And we're going to say date read. And we're going to put in there 2 curly brackets with the word date in the middle. And now when I exercise that template again, Command P, templates, insert templates, book notes, it'll put today's date in as well. So we want to use that stuff. And the things we can put in are the date, the time, and the title. And that's the features available with the built-in templating feature. Now, this is an example of how you use it for book notes, but you can even use it for things more mundane, just like lists. I'm going to make another one in here. We're going to call this AM checklist. And I'm going to put the date in, and then I'm going to put after that AM checklist. And I'll make that a heading 2. And then I can go TTT, and I can say journal, meditate, plan day, feed the dog. And there's 4. And so if you were putting together a daily checklist, you could template that. So I'm going to create, in fact, I'm going to go into create a new daily note. There's today's daily note. And then I'm going to hit Command P, template, insert template, AM checklist, and there you go. Every day I could just drop that in. Now you could also add that to your daily note checklist, and we cover that in the daily note segment. But just think about these checklists that you could put anywhere in any note. A lot of people use Obsidian as a sort of CRM system, a client relationship management tool. And maybe you want to put contact information. And you can make that a template. So you can say name, company, title, phone, address, personal notes. I'm going to put a heading 3 and say activity log, so you could put in notes anytime you talk to the person. This is a very basic version of it, but then let's say I create a new note. In fact, let's create a folder. We're going to call this one people. And I'm going to create a new note here. And we're going to make one for my buddy, Stephen Hackett. And I want to just drop in those notes on the contact information. I'm going to hit Command P, TE, templates, insert template, and then say contact information. And there we go. It drops in every time I make a new contact list. And then when I go to a note, let's say we go to the daily note and say activity log called Stephen Hackett. Now it's listed there. And if I jump to the note for Stephen Hackett, I've got the contact information there. If I want to see the backlinks, I can click that and go right back to the page. Are you getting it? Obsidian is really powerful when you start linking everything together this way. Now, there's one last trick I want to show you with templates, and that is quickening up the execution of templates. And to do that, we're going to go into the settings, and we're going to go to hotkeys. I'm going to type in template, insert current, or insert template is the one we want here, the third one. So we're going to add a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to make it Control Option T. That's conflicting with something else I've done. So how about, there we go. That worked. So we've got Option Command T. Now, when I want to insert a template now, all I do is hit Option Command T, and it goes me straight to that list where I can select the one I want and saves me a couple steps. Templates are really powerful. You definitely want to get these under your fingers and start using them in Obsidian. All right, now that we've mastered the core plugins, let's go to the next level with community plugins. And this is one of the things I love about Obsidian. The Obsidian developers made the application with a plugin architecture. That's why those original features made by the developers are called core plugins, because they're using the plugin architecture that they made available to the community. So community plugins are plugins made by other people. There is a security concern. Are you going to use a plugin made by someone you don't know in the application? Well, they've tried to solve that problem by having this community plugin database where it shows you the number of people downloading it, and they have some ways to try and make sure that you're safe with these plugins. But the ones I'm going to be covering in this section are very well respected and downloaded hundreds of thousands of times. But once you start adding these community plugins, you're going to see how you can really customize the Obsidian experience. If you want to make it your task manager, there's a plugin for that. If you want to make it a better database management application, there's a plugin for that. No matter what it is you're looking to do with Obsidian, somebody's made a plugin. In this section, I'm going to teach you how to install a plugin, and then we're going to go through some of my favorite plugins so you can get an idea of just how far you can take Obsidian with these community plugins. To install a community plugin, you want to go to the Obsidian settings and then go over to this Community Plugins tab. And by default, it's going to be turned off. They've got a bunch of language here about security and explanations of what you're getting, because a community plugin is something made by someone in the community. It's not made by the developer, and they can't ensure that it hasn't got any sort of malicious code in it. That being said, I am only recommending some of the most popular plugins that are well reviewed and understood to be good players in the community. But to get it started, you turn on community plugins, and that gets you to this additional setting to say that we're going to turn on this mode. Now, if you want to leave it, you can click turn on restricted mode, which disables community plugins. And then they've got a way to browse the existing plugins, and it shows you your current plugins. I don't have any installed. This is a clean install for the video. I'm going to go ahead and browse, and you can see here is a lot of community plugins. Some of these are going to be covered in this field guide. In fact, many of the most popular ones are covered here. In the very first video, we're going to talk about calendar plugin, but you can see here's Excalidraw that's got 811,000 downloads and was updated 4 days ago. So these plugins are very well recognized and very frequently downloaded and vetted. Now, as you scroll through, You can see there's currently 978. You get towards the bottom here, you've got some that are only downloaded, 1,000 times or even less. Let's go to the very bottom. We've got one here that collapses windows. It's only been downloaded 27 times. I think you should look at those with a little bit of a raised eyebrow. Check out the developer. Make sure you know what you're getting into. In this course, I'm not going to be covering all 978 plugins, but instead some of the more popular ones that I have come to rely on. And just look at this as a real fun thing for you as you get into Obsidian. You can examine and explore some of these additional plugins and add additional features to the Obsidian application through these plugins. It's kind of awesome. So I'm going to get started with Calendar in the next video, but several more of these are going to get covered in this section. All right, let's take a look at the Calendar plugin. To get to that, I'm going to go to Community Plugins, Browse, and they are by default sorted by most popular. You can see Calendar is the 5th most popular, but it's a great little plugin. I'll go ahead and install that. And that's all there is to it. It's installed now. We're going to go ahead and enable it. And whenever you download a new plugin, you can see that there's some nice instructions here about how to use it. All right, so we've got it installed. Now I'm going to expose the sidebar on the right, and you can see there's a new button there for the calendar. If I click that, it shows me the calendar. And the calendar plugin has the current month on it. You can move between months as you go through it to see future months. And each day has a little dot next to it. That shows you that it is connected to that day's daily note. So I'm going to go over here to the 17th, and now that just jumped to the daily note for the 17th. The dots represent the word count and the associated note. So you can see 17th has 1.5 dots, whereas the 25th only has 1 dot. And there's nothing on that one. So that's a very small one. There are some settings for the calendar plugin. If I go back to the plugins, and you'll see under community plugins, now there's a settings screen for calendar. And as you add additional plugins, you'll see that menu item grow. You can set the number of words per dot here. You can designate whether weeks start on Sunday, Monday. I always like Mondays, so I'm going to switch that to Monday, and you can see it's already reflected in the calendar. If you show the week number, it adds another column here, and that allows you to create a note related to the week. So it's basically a weekly note setting. And again, just like the daily note, you can have note formatting, templates, and the folder where they go. And you have the ability to override the local preferences if you want. So I've got it all set now. If I want to create a weekly note for this week, I just hit this 21st. It says, would I like to create it? Yes, I would. And then you can see week 21 of 2023 has its own note associated with it. I find the Calendar Community plugin essential, particularly if you're going to be using the daily note. If you're not using the daily note, it's not as essential, but it is nice having a plugin that can always give you the calendar in the upper right corner of Obsidian.